Welcome to Vayse, a podcast about weird stuff. I'm Peter C. Hine, and joining me as always is my old friend and co-host. He's fresh out of surgery, having a Neuralink chip implanted into his remarkable brain for the sole purpose of letting Elon Musk know exactly what he thinks of him 24 hours a day without interruption. Now that's dedication to the cause. And as an added bonus, he'll be able to record the entirety of tonight's episode without moving his beautiful lips. It's Mr. Stephen James Buckley.
That was my attempt at speaking without moving my lips, but that was only a visual. That was only visually funny. Yeah. So sometimes a piece of art comes along which I get totally obsessed by, to the point where I can't really think about anything else. I totally fixate on it and I talk about it to anyone who'll listen. This happened about 10 years ago when the first season of True Detective came out. I watched it 3 times in a row.
Yeah.
So, but less said about the new season, the better. But anyway, our guest this evening is someone that I've wanted to interview since last year, when I became enchanted to the point of obsession with one of his creations. This particular piece of unconventional transmedia storytelling was called Ong's Hat. I had no idea what to expect or what it even was. I just heard it mentioned a couple of times and saw that the audiobook was about 3 hours long, which happened to be the length of the walk I was about to take. So I put it on and I was immediately enthralled by this immersive story, told via the medium of mysterious brochures and posts on early internet message boards, about a group of quantum scientists and esoteric mystics who combined their respective disciplines and found a way to open a hole in the fabric of the universe and travel to parallel dimensions. But Ong's Hat was not simply a clever work of fiction presented in an unconventional manner. It was, in fact, the first example of what is known as an alternate reality game, in which participants knowingly immerse themselves in an interactive narrative which uses the real world as a platform. Like a lot of things that exist on the fringes of art, ARGs eventually got sucked up by the mainstream and were used as little more than a quirky marketing tool. And a very convincing argument could be made that the whole QAnon movement, along with January the 6th Capitol attack and Pizzagate, were using similar techniques, the gamification of politics by the sinister forces which operate behind the curtain. There is another way to look at this, of course, as a sort of magical ritual designed to bring about changes in both the participants' brains but also the world at large. There is a lot more to ARGs than meets the eye, and we're hoping to investigate this with our guest tonight. He describes himself as part poet, part scientist, and part madman, and has described his latest work, a trilogy called The Liminal Cycle, as an experiment in self-possession to invite a conversation with the void. So, without further ado, let's find out what the void has to say in our conversation with Mr. Joseph Matheny. Hello, Joseph.
Hi,
Hello.
Joseph.
Hey.
How was that intro? That was pretty good, wasn't it?
Yeah, that was good.
Like, I'm not normally the writer. Normally, Hine's the writer, but he let me have a go tonight. So,
you ever thought about being PR person?
Yeah, possibly.
So thanks very much for joining us. We're really, really pleased to have you here tonight. There's so much that we wanted to talk to you about. And so we're going to try to get into it pretty much straight away. I mean, because your career and the art that you've been putting out has spanned decades and decades now. I mean, going back, so Ong's Hat came, was it very end of the 80s, early 90s?
Yep, end of the 80s.
And you've been working in tech before that, hadn't you?
That's about the time I started working in tech.
Right, okay.
I kind of made the segue. I started dabbling in tech as a hobbyist, and back in the late 80s, that was something that you could do. We all built our own computers, and I used to go to the Berkeley Mac user group, the BMUG, and people like Steve Wozniak was there, and
wow.
So like this was the beginning. This was before the internet was really publicly accessible. It was still the ARPANET probably back then. But that was where you could dial up into something called a bulletin board system, and then you could talk to people from all over the place. And I tell people this; they sometimes don't believe me, but in 1989, you could send an email, and it would get from my desktop to my friend's desktop in the Netherlands in 3 days, and we thought that was amazing because it even beat like airmail. You know, it was like I can send you a letter and you'll get it in 3 days. We thought because back then what happened is long distance was still a thing. There were no cell phones. Everybody had like landlines, And so you would set up a computer, which I had one, and you would have a bulletin board system. And at night, when the rates were lower, the bulletin board system would automatically dial up the closest one at the like the next what do you call it, what do they call those things, the next region over, and it would upload all the mail on its server, and it would pick up any mail that it had from that server and then download it, and then that would happen, and it would just hopscotch across the world into like computer dialing computer at night. And that's how this email went. And so it was almost like Pony Express, it's like you gave somebody a letter, they put it in their bag, they jumped on the horse, they rode till the horse died, they handed it off to the next guy. And that's how email was. So back then I was playing in tech, but I didn't really get my first paying job in tech until 93.
Right. Okay.
Because there wasn't any jobs.
So what made you kind of look at that sort of clunky system that was the pre-internet almost, and start thinking, got the gears in your head working of the project like Ong's Hat?
88, 89, somewhere around there. I'm like just kind of thinking like what would have been the vague year. I don't know exactly, but it was like in the era of 88, 89. I had subscribed to this magazine in Berkeley. I was still living in Chicago. I was about to move to California, but I was still living in Chicago where I grew up. And I found this magazine in the back of something, like some weird zine thing that I found, like a letter, and send $2 to get this magazine. And it was called High Frontiers, and it was out of Berkeley. And so they were talking about the well and this new thing called the bulletin board system on the well. And so I happened to have a computer. And so I tracked down a modem, which was like unheard of, and this thing was huge. It was like this big metal thing, like half the size of a briefcase. And it did like, I think 300 baud or something ridiculously low. But that was like the top of the line back then. And I installed it and I dialed in to the well on this number, and I went, oh, and I just had an epiphany. I'm like, oh my God, this is the future of the medium. This is it. This is where books are going. This is where movies will end up going. I just had this moment where I'm like, everything's going to be this in the future. And so I just set about learning it as much as I could, and found, like self-taught hacking around at night, like trying to dial into other computers, doing war dialers, finding computers, like just randomly dialing numbers until I heard one answer, and then see if it was a computer or if it was a modem, or if it was, and just do that, like sit up all night and just do that, drinking Joe Cola and eating Chinese food out of a carton. And then I moved to California and got closer to, because I was in Santa Cruz, and so I got really close to the Apple community, which was over the hill. But a lot of people that worked at Apple lived in Santa Cruz as a bedroom community, and a lot of hippies, that had turned techies, that were like going to UC Santa Cruz. So there were mathematicians who would turn techie. And so I was in the right place at the right time. Yeah. And they were like echoing what I was saying. I'm like, this is the future of media. And they said, yes, yes, yes. And, I'd never had anybody say yes before them, and now I had everybody saying yes. So I said, well, I'm gonna look into this. I'm gonna do this and learn how this works, and pursue this as a career. And for a long time, it was just something I was really good at, and I did for free. And then probably maybe 91, somewhere around there, I remember everybody suddenly had to have email. Like businesses, people, everybody suddenly had to have email. And my phone started ringing off the wall because these businesses would call people and say, we need somebody that knows email. And everybody say, oh, there's this guy I know in Santa Cruz, and he knows email really well. And so I just started getting all these calls, and then I became a professional. That's how it happened.
Yeah.
It's all because I wanted to write an expanded book.
Yeah.
I wanted to write a book that would reach out and touch people.
And that's what's so interesting, is the way that it did kind of reach out and touch people, because, and I think we'll sort of talk about this a bit later, in the way that the fiction and the reality of what you created is almost a magical working in that it alters.
No, it was a magical working.
Yeah.
It was intentional as such.
Exactly. So what I was wondering was, how did you first get into, so we've heard about the tech side, how did you first get into that side of the weird stuff, the occult or the esoteric stuff going back?
Oh, I've always been into that. I've always
since
been
you were a
into
kid,
that.
Yeah.
So I have a friend who's writing a book for MIT that probably, I'm guessing, will come out next year, but she's writing about the unknown history of the beginnings of the internet and the tech culture, and she keyed in on something, and of course she called me and interviewed me for it. But it's that back then in the late 80s, all of us tech people, in the early 90s, all of us tech people, long hair. In fact, we were nicknamed the ponytails. Like an executive would say, "Get me a ponytail," and he meant "Get me a tech guy." That's what we were called, the ponytails, because we all had ponytails. We were all into either ritual magic, which I was into very much, or they were into D&D type stuff. Mm-hmm. And sometimes there was crossover. People were into both of those. I was never into the tabletop gaming stuff, but I had a lot of friends that were. I was into ritual magic and theater. That my whole thing was that. And so I saw the connection between ritual magic and what I wanted to do as a project called The Living Book and theater. And so I wanted to incorporate all the things I was interested in, which was a lot of things, and I wanted to tie them up into one project. Mm-hmm. And so that's really how it happens. It's like, can I create, the Swiss Army knife of an art project? Like it has all the aspects of everything, a little bit of everything. So that's what I was after. That's what I was trying to do. And I just called it, back then I called it the Living Book Project, because it was, it's a narrative, it's a story, but it's not a book like there is. So I had this, I was reading and studying a lot of stuff about the future of the book. Umberto Eco wrote a really good piece on that, a book on that, or co-authored a book on that. And so I was steeped in this idea of what will a book be in 10 years? Yeah. And one night, I was hanging out with my friend Nick Herbert, who's the quantum physicist, Nick Herbert, and we were tripping on acid, and I was showing him how to dial into a BBS, and I jokingly called it DUI and the Infobahn. But I was explaining to him how this worked and how databases worked. And in doing that, I had to explain it to him in a way that I would understand, what he would understand. And then I explained it to myself in a way I'd never explained it before. And I said, think of this. What is a book? A book in this world is a unit of measure. It's this thing that I put an encapsulation around of all these words. And I said, okay, this set of words over here, it's a subset. I'm calling that a book. Out of all the words it could be, it's these words, and that subset is called the book. In a database, that's what I would call it, right? And that book is now flexible, and it can grow and shrink in real time. I can be adding data, I can be extracting data out of it in real time. I can even skew the data so that I can make a different book out of the data set. And that's the light kind of went over my head, and I'm yeah, it's not just, you're not just high, but you are. But yeah, that's true.
But it is that sort of almost connectivity that comes from, comes from psychedelic experimentation. You can see how that kind of factored into both kind of the sort of thinking that created the internet, but also the sort of thinking that your vision for Ong's Hat and the Living Book. It's that same kind of almost mycelium-esque kind of connection.
Absolutely.
So something it's interesting you mentioned the theatre thing, because I've often felt sort of the more I've looked at magic, whether it be ritual magic or various types of magic and magical practice, there almost is an element of theatre to it. It's almost like I can see a definite relationship between magic and, say, LARPing and like D&D and do you feel like magic is almost a form of theatre, or theatre is a form of magic?
Yes.
Yeah. Good.
Yes. It goes both ways.
Yeah. It's there's definitely a crossover, isn't there?
There has to be, because in order to make it, well, first of all, there's a lot of definitions of magic. So I'll just give you what my working definition at the moment is, which is you do certain things to put yourself in a certain state of mind, which allows you to accept and receive information that you might not receive otherwise. Yeah. You can have conversations that you couldn't have otherwise, right? So how you want to define that is up to you. Like, am I talking to an entity that's, that has subjective reality, identity, or objective? Like, yes. The answer is yes. It's like there's certain types of information out there that you can access in certain states of mind that you get to that state of mind through theater. I mean, magic is theater.
It's derangement of the senses, isn't it?
It's derangement of the senses. It's set and setting. It's all of those things. Like the incense plays a role, the colors play a role, the sounds play a role, the chanting plays a role, the wardrobe that you have on, the room that you're in and how it's set up, all of that plays a role. That's theater, right?
Yeah. And it's D&D as well.
Degree, isn't it? It's D&D is a subset of theater for sure. Yeah.
What kind of magic were you practicing? Was it? I
was practicing Golden Dawn.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
And then I got way into D. And once you get into D, you can go a couple of ways. But then I went kind of the purist way, and I got involved with a group of people that were working the history of D and also in the history of Enochian and whether or not the stuff that the Golden Dawn was using was perverted, maybe like stepped on a little bit, to use a drug term. And so I started going to the source, the D source, and I got way in. There's a terminology that people use that are into D history, and it's called Enochian flu. You get obsessed, like you can't get out of it, man. I know people that went so far as they started to arrange their house according to the watchtowers.
Really?
Yeah. And I'd come over and I'd be like, oh, you changed things around. Yeah, I had to put that chair over there because that's really element of fire. I'm like, okay. And I didn't get that bad, but I got almost that bad.
And the kind of results you were getting from the Enochian magic?
I got some very interesting results. So, well, here's the thing. Again, it's theater. And as you pointed out, it's derangement of the senses. So if you do a true set of rituals and you do them true to form, you could be in that room for 12 hours chanting and walking in circles and burning things and so you are altering your senses when you do that. And you're becoming deranged, but you were doing it willingly. You're doing it for a reason. You're doing it to get into a state of mind that you can have this conversation. And then, of course, one or two times I felt like something was in the room, and the people that were with me saw it too. Like I would check in with people. I'd be like, "Do you see that?" And I wouldn't say what. I would just look down. It's like, "Do you see that?" They're like, "You mean that thing that's floating above the crystal?" "Yep, that." "You see it too?" "Okay." And so we would check in. And the scryer that we had was an artist who was not into ritual magic at all. She just she stared into the crystal, and I had the obsidian mirror, the whole thing set up, and she would go into trance pretty easily, and she would start telling me what was being said, and that I would see things floating above her, and and of course we were all in a state because we had been at this for 12 hours, but that was the point.
Yeah,
so I don't write it off because of that. I go, well, we intended that. You can't talk to these things unless you get there. Like you got to get there. So we would get there, and then we'd have these conversations, and it was pretty interesting. Like some of the things I asked, I'd be like, well, I don't really think that you're the angels as they're described by Ezekiel, or I don't think any of this is biblical. We're not talking about Yahweh here, and they agreed. They're like, oh yeah, that's not a deity we recognize at all. It's like, well, what are you like? And then they would give me some Ramtha answer, It's like, I am that in all things. I'm like, oh, come on.
one of the things that I've been thinking about a lot recently is that sort of breakdown between subjectivity and objectivity, which I think is the place where Magick is the most effective. Because I suppose what I've been wondering is how much, when we're talking about things like UFO encounters rather than the lights in the sky, I'm talking about actual experiences that people have of either abduction or contact with beings, and then going back to, obviously when you've got the things like Jacques Vallée to the fairy lore, and then you look at the magical rituals and the commonalities between them. And what a lot of these encounters have is that they're kind of highly subjective, and they're often experienced by only one person or only one or two people, whereas when you have the lights in the sky, you can often get tens of people who see them, or even more sometimes, and you get that a lot. But I'm wondering what the connection between the human mind and the human consciousness is, and these forces. Because when I think about it, and I've done a bit of magic, I've not got into the whole Enochian thing and that sort of thing, but when I'm having these sorts of experiences, I definitely don't feel like it's something internal or something that I would willingly create myself. And yet, when I listen to these descriptions of other people's experiences and take into account my own, I see it inextricably linked to the observer. In a way, and I start to wonder, like, would there be magic without humans? How much does human consciousness create these entities, these beings, and how much do they live outside of us? Do you have any ideas on that?
I think it's a 50-50. Okay, right, so are you familiar with the concept of a daemon in networking?
Only very superficially.
Okay, so you know what a web server is?
Yeah. Okay,
so the technical name for a web server is an HTTPD, which is Hypertext Transfer Protocol daemon. Right. And what a daemon is, it lives on a Unix server, or it could live on a Windows server these days, and whatever, Linux. But, a daemon that lives on a Unix server is something that sits fallow until it's invoked. Notice all this terminology? Where's it come from? Until it's. I was having this discussion with the MIT person the other day, and they were not aware of this. And I said, a lot of this language that got wrapped around what now is called networking was set up by people like me and other people that were into either D&D or ritual magic or both. And so the terminology is like demons and invocations and all these things, right?
Yeah.
Which makes sense. But it describes perfectly the process. So when I send a string to a web server, I say, something like HTTPD, get, put. I give it these instructions, and then it wakes up, and it does what I ask it to do, and it goes back to sleep, and it sits there and it just sits there dormant until it's invoked again. Which is the way in magic. If you study magic for a long time, you understand that a demon, that's a perfect description of a demon.
Yeah,
a demon is something that wakes when it's invoked and does what it's told to do exactly, and then it goes dormant again, right? So, that's why you have to be very careful with your language with the demon. You have to say, I want this specific thing, because if you're not precise with it, it will give you a bad output. And the same thing with an HTTPD. If I'm not precise with it, I will get bad outputs. So these things parallel a lot. So having said that, my conception of these things like the Vallée idea, which I've always, since I read Passport to Magonia a long time ago, like I've been entranced with that idea.
Yeah.
I've never seen a UFO. I've always wanted to, but I've never seen one, and that's probably why, because I want to. But I've had some liminal experiences, and I've come to the conclusion that these entities or these intelligences that we can talk to sit dormant because they're not fully in reality until we complete the circuit. So humans come along and do something to get yourself in the right state of mind. Like you walk 3 days in the woods and you're exhausted. You sit 3 days, and I do these things called vigils. I'm really big into Martin Shaw, if you know who Martin Shaw is.
Well, I don't think so.
If not, you should read Martin Shaw. The great introduction to him is a book he wrote called Wolf's Milk. So Martin Shaw is a mythologist in Devon, England. and he takes people out into the woods, or he himself goes into the woods, sits for 4 days with no food, just water, no shelter, just like a tarp to keep the rain off of you if it happens. And you take, water and enough things to keep warm, but not a sleeping bag, or like you make it very, very simple. And you sit in the woods and you just shut the fuck up and listen, because the woods will talk to you if you'll shut up long enough and let it talk.
Yeah.
Right. And let the land speak to you. And so I do that quite often. And so I've had a lot of time to think of these things and kind of like almost with a little bit of science and a little bit of poetry, because you need both. I started to think about like, what is this thing, and these things that are talking to me, and what why do they exist? Are they external, internal? And the answer was yes. It's the same thing with when I was talking to the Enochian spirits. It's like, are you objective or subjective? Yes. The answer I got was yes. And that makes sense, like, because you have to have both.
Yeah.
You have to suspend. You need to know if it's subjective or objective, and just take it for what it is. Meet it halfway. And when you meet it halfway, the third thing arises, just like Burroughs and Geisen.
Yeah.
Talking about cut-ups, the third thing.
Yeah.
The third mind. When that happens, that's what's talking. It's the third mind. It's not you. It's not it. It's another thing together that you are a part of. Like it's holographic. You are a part of it. It doesn't exist without you. Or it doesn't exist until you. Like you have to complete the circuit.
Yeah, that reminds you of playing music. The idea of the third thing as well. You talked about it in terms of writing, but you could also have it in music if two people are jamming, and suddenly it clicks, and then you've got something that's more than just those two people. There's this third thing that's there.
Yeah, and you do that face to each other where you're like,
yeah,
you get into that zone.
Yeah.
And so you can do that with your computer when you're writing. Like you can do that with a lot of things. So if you get into that zone, it's no longer you. You somehow have bypassed the ego of yourself, and you're into this other thing. And it's not just you. It's not just whatever the other thing is. It's both of you creating a third thing. And so I think that's what happens when you got these weird experiences. And I think that's why they're wonderfully so nonlinear, because like you get these weird experiences. Like my best experiences are so weird and funny and so odd that if I told somebody, they would think I was making it up. It would sound like I'm just like taking the piss, as they say over there in the UK.
Yeah, that's what we say.
Yeah. And so like, but that's what it's like. Sometimes I don't tell people because it's just like, it's too ridiculous. And it was not meant for anybody but me anyway.
No, that's one of the things that we've talked a little bit about on the podcast before, is that the more straightforward and narrative based someone's experience is, the less I kind of believe it. Whereas the stranger it is and the less sensical it is, the more I'm inclined to believe it, because why would they be telling you that? Why would they be making up something like that? Yeah, the things, the stranger UFO encounters, like the one I always think of is the one with that guy who got the cookies or the
pancakes.
Pancakes. And I think that one's in Passport to Magonia, I think, or
it's in a lot of books. It's a Cosmic Trigger, and
then when it's analyzed, it's just a pancake. There's nothing supernatural about it at all. But why would he make up a whole story around that? There's
it was
no
a
reason.
buckwheat pancake, and at the time, like the 50s, like that wasn't a common thing. But it was. But it was just a pancake. Yeah.
So the whole constructed narrative around it, with the ship with the smokeless oven and the small guys in it, the whole thing it sounds completely crazy, but that makes you just think, well, there's probably something in that.
Well, see, when I read George Hansen's The Trickster and the Paranormal, I was a little hesitant. I was like, somebody told me you should read this book because he talks about liminal experience a lot, liminal places, and I'm like, and I started reading it, and there was some UFO stuff in there, and I was like, but then all of a sudden I read this one section that he wrote, and then I was in. He sold me because it matched with my experience. And he said, you can't just talk about liminality. You have to sneak up on it sideways. And I'm like, absolutely. Because as soon as you start talking about it directly and logically as a thing, it stops being the thing that you were trying to describe.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's got to be
just like you were
vision.
saying, like, yeah, exactly, peripheral vision. If people start telling me like a linear story and they know all the facts, like if they're nuts and bolts, I'm like, you didn't have an experience.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I was wondering, in terms of, you've talked about the various synchronicities that happened to both yourself and others who were involved in Ong's Hat. Do you have a personal explanation for synchronicities, or what's your personal sort of synchronicity theory? And do you think it's the same in terms of, between objective and subjective, in the same way that we're talking about magic, etc.? What are your thoughts on those?
Well, synchronicity is only significant to you. It might not be significant to me, right? So what makes it so powerful is it's personal. Yeah. So I was just thinking the other day of this song, and the song came on the radio. That only relates and applies to one person, me, right? Yeah. Like, and possibly you could see it happening if a group of people were listening and the song came on the radio and then something happened that it was the title of the song. It could happen to groups too. I've seen that happen. But to me, I try not to question it too much, because synchronicity to me, especially as an artist, when I'm creating and I don't get a bunch of synchronicities and I know I'm probably not on the right track, and then when I get into like a series of synchronicities that are very high level and come very fast and in series, then I'm like, bam, I'm on it. Like, and I just follow that track. Now, Ong's Hat and also Liminal trilogy, I've been reported to me, because I wrote both of these, created both of those. I had a lot of synchronicities around the creation of them. And then people started telling me, like, when I read this, I get these like series of synchronicities. And some people are disturbed by that, and other people like me are delighted by that. Some people are not quite into that. They feel like it's an invasion, or maybe they find it to be scary. And I guess I understand that. I've never been that way, but I get it. I've seen enough people become disconcerted by it that okay, I accept that there are people like that. But I'm led to create things that seem to encourage synchronicity in other people when they experience the art. I don't know why or how. So people have asked me, like, what's the secret? How do you do that? There's no secret sauce, man. I don't know. It's like, I'm just led to do it that way. And when I do it that way, it seemingly creates synchronicities for groups of people. Like, many people have contacted me about Liminal Cycle, and like told me I got all these synchronicities when I was reading this trilogy, like one after another. Is driving me crazy. Like, well, how did you do that? And I didn't do that. I don't know how I did that, because really I was just like following my bliss and following my unconscious as much as like really what I tried to get my conscious mind out of the way.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So what I'm doing, I think, again, this is just me guessing, but I'm guessing that like the imagery that I'm pulling up is coming from a deep, maybe collective unconscious or near collective unconscious level. And so that makes it trigger the same kind of things in other people, because we're talking about like very deep imagery that applies to a lot of people.
Yeah. I mean, there's some of the stuff in Ong's Hat, like the, even sort of the descriptions of the various worlds and the like, the alternate universe version of Java. And there was a description of a a place where there was sort of like an abandoned city almost, with like sort of canals running through it. And that I can still remember exactly where I was when I listened to the audiobook of that, and I wasn't anywhere particularly excited. I was just like walking around, and like I still remember, and every time I walk past that place or cycle past that place, I'm straight back in that place that was described in Ong's Hat. It's just like, it was such a powerful image, and for whatever reason I finished that audiobook, and I was just like, I don't want to read anything else or listen to, I just want more Ong's Hat. I want to know. I want to, but it was just. I think with Ong's Hat, it was just it was because it wasn't. If it had been a story that was explained explicitly, and just a straightforward A to B linear narrative that had a story and described all the places, it wouldn't have had the same effect on me. But because it was there, because it was liminal, because it was in the corner of my eye, because I couldn't. It was just a glimpse of it told through. No,
that's exactly it. You can't describe why or how you're doing it, but you instinctively know that you're doing it. Like, it's right when you're doing it, but you don't know. Like, if you said, "How did you do that?" we couldn't explain it. Like, but
and it's the same thing. And it's like, but perhaps like the reason it haunted me so much was because it was a description that wasn't like an explicit description. It kind of left a bit to the imagination, and it was liminal, and then it sort of seeps in.
But see, that's what I shoot for with my art. Is I try to recreate the feeling that I get in those states. Like, so I'm in this state, and I can just feel like something around the corner right there, but I can't describe it. But I know it's there. Somebody's looking at me, like like that. Like, I feel somebody's eyes on the back of my head. Right.
That makes me wonder if these works are almost like grimoires. In
Absolutely.
the way that, because when I take, say, a book like 6 Ways, the Aidan Wachter book, I look at that, and then when I start trying some of that stuff, the first thing that I start to notice is synchronicities before I notice any major magic or anything like that. Just tiny synchronicities start to seep in, and it's the same way with Ong's Hat, and it's the same way with Liminal, that first part of the Liminal trilogy, where it's almost like you're teaching the reader to experience synchronicities, because Cameron starts to experience them, and then that becomes a synchronicity storm. And so that's almost teaching someone that little bit of magic in the same way that, and as you're saying, this is what gets you into that state. So it's almost like you're writing down the spell that gets you into that state. So as soon as someone else starts to read that, puts them into that state.
Where did it come from? Like, I don't know. It's like, I don't know where it came from. So like, people think I'm kidding when I say this, but I don't do anything creative. My stuff is all received works.
Yeah.
Right. Okay.
So here's a good example. The Liminal trilogy, right?
Yeah.
So the Liminal trilogy, the idea for the Liminal trilogy came about in 2017 when I got sick of tech and I realized I want to do something else. Like, I need to do something drastic, because I was feeling like falling in a rut. I was tired of tech. I was tired of like living around tech and being around people in tech, and like, I just need something. I need to do something drastic. So I signed up to work the salmon fishing season in Alaska. Wow. And I worked the sockeye season in Naknek, Alaska for 3 months. And then when I was there, when I wrapped up the sockeye season, I was getting ready to go back to the States, or the lower 48 as they call it. I went to this restaurant in this little village, like tiny little village in the middle of nowhere. Like, the only way you can get in and out of this village is by boat or by plane. There are no roads. None. There's no roads leading there, no roads leading out.
Wow.
So, and grizzly bears walk down the street in the middle of the day. I swear to God, I'd never been anywhere like that, and it was amazing. and so I felt like, okay, I could do this some more, but like, that the season's over, and that was cool, and I'm glad I did that. I lived out my little fantasy, being Jack London. And while I'm sitting there having breakfast at this cafe, this group of Japanese guys comes in, and we start talking. And, we're goofing around and hitting it off. And I said, well, who are you guys? Were you guys fishing? Oh, no, we're not fishing. We just stopped in the village to get supplies. Well, what are you doing? They're like, well, we're going up north to the Arctic Circle, and we're going to measure methane release, because we're doing this study for global warming, or for climate change. And I said, "Oh, that's cool." Like, they said, "What do you do when you're not up here fishing?" And I said, "Well, I work in IT." "Oh, really? Do you know satellites?" I'm like, "Yeah, I can do squirt the bird. That's what it's called, sending data to a satellite." And they like, "Would you like to sign on to our ship to be part of our expedition?" I'm like, "Doing what?" And they're like, "Running IT on our boat." I'm like, "Oh, yeah." So I spent like another 6 months like in the Arctic Circle. And
Wow.
I was up there at a time of year where I got a good 2 months of dark time. So this
Night
is like
country.
when, yeah. That's when people told me, like, when I saw that was happening, I was hoping it would be something as profound as what I experienced. Unfortunately, it's not. But anyway, nothing's ever going to be that first season, is it?
No.
I thought that the second was good. I thought that on reflection, I think that the first time I watched it, I was disappointed because it wasn't the first season.
Yeah.
But on reflection, I
Yeah.
think actually it was pretty good, and there was some interesting, some really interesting stuff in there, and it had like a really cool, like that kind of spooky Hollywood vibe kind of thing.
Yeah.
They should have left True Detective with just that one season, like they did with the Watchmen series. You know, it's just that one series. It's perfect.
Retire it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you know, it caught my ear because like the stuff that Rustin Cole was saying was directly, and people later pointed this out, is like it was directly lifted from Ligotti.
Yeah.
And
the conspiracy against the human race. And
definitely from that. Yeah. And so there was some things that were they were lifted, but
the same about being in the Arctic Circle.
Yeah, so I'm in the Arctic Circle, and I'm seeing all this stuff that's like affecting me emotionally. It's a heightened effect emotionally because I think there's weird magnetics up there that like affect you if you're up there a long time.
Okay.
And then the darkness affects you.
Yeah.
And I saw like direct evidence of climate change because like the scientists were pointing out, like they'd point to it, like we'd float by this area and there'd be like 4-foot trees. And I'd be like, there shouldn't be 4-foot trees there, right? And they're like, that's actually supposed to be permafrost, and it hasn't been for so long.
Whoa.
Those trees have gotten that big.
Jesus.
And that was the first time, like we all talk about climate change, but when you see it, when you actually see it, it does something to you. And so it did something to me emotionally, and the darkness, and the fact that I was working 16, 18-hour days on the boat and like not sleeping and like all this weird stuff. So like I do the tour, I do the thing, I get on a plane, I come back to the lower 48, I go to Los Angeles, and my friend is in South Africa shooting this pilot thing for some reality TV show or something she was trying out for. And she has a house on the beach in Pacific Palisades. And she said, you can sit at my house for 3 months and then figure out what you want to do. Okay. And I just sat there. Like, and couldn't say anything. Like I was almost comatose. Like, and people would come over and visit me and I wouldn't say anything and they'd leave. You know, I'd just sit there and stare out the window at the beautiful ocean view, but just sit there. And then I started writing. I didn't know what I was writing, but I just started writing. And I told this friend of mine, I said, can you log into this Google Doc and watch me and like kind of be overseer? And if you see anything I'm writing stupid, like grammatically, like point it out to me later. Okay. Well, unbeknownst to me, he was watching me in real time. I didn't know this, but I just was telling him like, be my editor, basically. And one day he comes over and he sits down and he goes, Are you transcribing this from longhand? I'm like, no. Why? He's like, you're not pausing. It's just writing and writing and writing and writing and writing. And you're not stopping and you're not pausing and you're not going back and correcting anything, but there's nothing wrong. And I'm like, yeah, I am taking notes. Like I can't tell you like where this is coming from, but he's a person I could trust in saying this to. I said, but I am taking notes. I don't know where this is coming from. Like Cameron is in my head.
Yeah.
And the only way I'm going to get him out is I'm going to get this trilogy. And by then I knew it was a trilogy. I'm like, this is going to be about 3 books and I just have to do it. And once I wrote the first one, Cameron went away and then Ezra took over. And then once I wrote the second one, Ezra went away, and then the third one was written by me, and then I wrote the third one.
I'm about 15 pages from the end of the third one. I didn't manage to finish it on time, but it's great. I'm really enjoying it, especially like the third one in particular, just the way it's bringing it all together. It's just a complete headfuck. It's great. But something that you said just then about how almost the books grew from they came after the time spent in the Arctic and seeing the climate change, and then I think you mentioned in the third book in Station Numero about something about how the whole concept of nature and how we are nature, and this whole idea that so with that in mind, I suppose like seeing climate change happen, right in front of your eyes, seeing physical evidence of it, is essentially you seeing yourself in a way sort of being destroyed.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
I mean, you've got that connection with it, so I can see almost kind of where that element of how that kind of fed into that part of Liminal, because a lot of, obviously in the middle book as well, you've got the desire to kind of get out there, Ezra getting out there and sort of communing with the forest and communing with whatever it was that he communed with out there.
Yeah.
I didn't realize, I knew you'd been to the Arctic, but I didn't realize that the two were so intrinsically linked. So that's really interesting.
Oh, and also the second book, which takes place in Big Sur, I did go to that place. That's a real cafe. There really is German guy named Ralph, who I met in the woods.
Worked at the bakery.
He worked at the bakery. Like all of that was real. That was real stuff. Now, did I have the experience in the road? No, but I did. But I did sit in the woods, like right across the. Like if you follow the directions in that book, and if you read the book and say like, okay, here's the bakery. I crossed the road. There's a gate. There's a road. That's all there.
Yeah.
That picture at the end of the book, that circle that I found in the road, that's real.
I noticed there was some very specific things in there that made me think like, I bet this is actually a real place because it's
a real place.
It's so specific how you've done it.
It's a real place where I sat for weeks and was doing kind of the Martin Shaw thing where I was sitting in the woods, but also I camped out across the road and there was a lot of ravens in that area. And so like I talked to the ravens. I met some raccoons that lived in the area, talked to them. I really did sit in a hollow tree. Like all of that stuff really happened to me.
What do you think it is about the woods specifically? They're obviously always linked to sort of magical experiences or profound experiences. It's always the woods. Do you think it's something to do with the trees themselves, or do you think it's to do with the state of mind it puts people in? I guess we're going back to subjective, objective again.
Well, the answer is yes, obviously. But if you've ever been up in that area, like around Santa Cruz and Big Sur and what's called the Central Coast, California, those redwood trees are massive, and they are old, very old. Like there's trees up there where you can count the rings to the age of Christ.
Yeah.
That's how big these organisms are and how long they've been around. So there's a lot of resonance that they've been soaking up, and they've been around longer than us, like in America especially. Like they've been around longer than at least us white people have been here. And I think that's why people like Kerouac and Henry Miller were attracted to that area, because like where I was camping, I could walk up the road and go up the creek, and I could go to the cabin where Kerouac wrote Big Sur, and then I could go the other way, and I could go to Henry Miller's house, which is now a museum. So I was like snuggled in between these two things, and there's a reason why these people are attracted here. There's a reason why Esalen is there. And if you've ever been to Esalen, Esalen is magical. Like, dude, is so magical. I spent a lot of time up there because people would get me in for free. Like Robert Anton Wilson, when he lived in Santa Cruz, I'd drive him because he didn't drive. I'd drive him to Esalen, and then I'd be his assistant for the weekend. So I'd get to do a weekend in Esalen for free. So like that place is really, really, really magical. That whole area is just super magical, very charged. Yeah. And there's something called the Watchers that they experience out there. I've seen it. It's really, really weird. Like when the fog rolls in and the sun is up, the sun comes through the fog, and it literally, you can look this up online. The Big Sur watchers, literally the form of a human will appear in the fog in front of you, like glowing dark shadow person will appear in front of you. It's like really weird.
Wow.
So scientists, of course, have said, we can explain this, and I'm sure they can, but they can't explain the effect it has on you and what it had on the Native Americans and all the people since. It's like you're walking through the woods and you see this, ethereal creature like looking at you through the fog, and it's glowing and it's dark, and like you're like, yeah, okay, you can't explain that. You can't write that away with science.
And I guess what matters is what happens when the connection is made, when the circuit is complete, so to speak, as you said. So that's
so you have that connection and you have that circuit, and then something occurs that we can't explain. So it's like when I look at a piece of art, the piece of art standing alone is beautiful. I come up and I look at the piece of art and something new is created. The interaction between me and the art and me and looking at the art creates this third thing. So the third thing happens. In Big Sur, the third thing happens a lot.
I was going to say, I mean, you get the same thing. I get the same thing from looking at trees as I do from a piece of art. You get that thing when, if you look at it, you start to realize that, like you say, the third thing, you start to feel something else between it. And obviously it's been like that for centuries and centuries and centuries, thousands of years. Shamanism, there's a lot to do with trees and that sort of thing, which is really interesting. It reminded me of what you were saying about going out into the wood and just experiencing it. There was 2 bits in recent Lavender books, and I'm going to completely murder what are quite profound bits in it. But one of them, he talks about sitting amongst people and reaching out with your mind and just saying, okay, who's here? And then eventually someone will reply. You just sit there. And then the second thing he says, which I think is in Secret Machines, one of the Secret Machines books, is the sitting in darkness and doing the same, but you sit in the darkness on your own and you let your consciousness expand outwards in that sort of who's here sort of way. And I suppose that so much of that is to do with your environment as well. If you do that in the woods, you'll get one effect. If you do it in a crowded place, you'll get another effect. If you do it in the dark on your own, you'll get yet another effect. But the point is putting yourself into that set state, that receptive state, I suppose, where you allow these other things in that modern life kind of dislocates us from or takes us out completely. There's nothing about that in modern life, in the sort of get up, have your breakfast, go to work, come home, watch TV, go to bed. You're never in that state of receptiveness. Too much noise, too much light. One of the things that I discovered, like around 2010, I went and lived in a cave outside of Big Sur in the desert. Wow.
I've got a picture of me in the cave. It's pretty cool. But it was, it was a big, airy cave, and it was really far out in the middle of nowhere. And when it got dark, it got dark. Yeah. And if you looked up at the sky, like you could see the Milky Way. Like you could see the Milky Way. Like which you can't do anywhere if you're anywhere around light pollution. No, you can't see it. But like you get out that far, and you could see things, man. Like you can lie there for hours. Like I used to just do that. I'd go out and lie on a boulder and just stare at the sky for hours. That was my TV. Just look at the sky. Like all kinds of like meteorites. You don't see any of that in the city. No. Like no. And I used to see all night long. I'd see meteorites.
How did that kind of experience of having nothing between you and nature in that way, or the universe in that case, when you're looking at the stars, how did that affect your creativity?
It accelerated it like amazingly. So a couple of weird things you can say is like if you just sit there and stare at the on a boulder and stare at the sky long enough, you start to like a distortion happens. And you kind of feel like you're looking at a bowl, like an upside down bowl, like like you're in a dome, And you don't notice that unless you just lay there and like for a long time and like look at it, and then you start to realize that you're kind of in a dome. And I'm sure it's an atmospheric effect that's doing that. I think Joseph Campbell like pointed out that the whole thing about circles and why we do rituals like this way and up and down is because it's the field of vision, the dome of vision. It's like if you look around in every direction, your field of vision is a dome. The ground is here, and then the sky is here, right? And so this is. But you notice this is how we do ritual.
Yeah.
Right. It's always the four corners in the dome.
Cardinal
right?
points,
right. Yeah.
Cardinal points in the dome. Like everything's a dome. So that makes sense. And so. But it's just weird to have it happen, and then you start to feel like, am I in a simulation? Like, is this the Matrix showing itself? Whoa! And then you're like, wait, I didn't take drugs. Why am I seeing this?
It's interesting though, because what you said earlier, Hine, about how, and what you both said basically about how modern life kind of pushes it out and makes it like almost inaccessible. And I agree with you, but I think there's one exception to that, which would be the internet. And I feel like the internet almost kind of, obviously not every aspect of the internet, some aspects of the internet are absolutely atrocious, but there's elements of it which are able to be used in that way as like a they can be used magically, and they can be used as you've demonstrated with the Ong's Hat project. It's almost like with the internet, we somehow kind of created, or maybe with the help of something else, created a means to kind of almost escape that modern life, or another avenue out. I'm not explaining this very well. I'm going to let you two sort of talk
I think I know where you're trying to go.
I've heard you, Joseph, describe the internet as a form of representation of the collective unconscious.
Yeah.
It's difficult because obviously going back to when you were talking earlier about when the internet was mainly run by hippies and it seemed a lot more love and light.
Yeah.
Whereas now it's really difficult to imagine the internet without the constant pressure of the boot of capitalism pushing down on it, because everything is
grinning face.
And if we're not paying for stuff by money, we're paying for it with personal data, which is then mined for money and so on. Yeah. And it sometimes feels like, do you think that the internet is a failed experiment in freedom of expression?
I think that when we say the internet now versus if I said the internet in 1995 through 99, maybe 2001, somewhere around there, I would be talking about two different things. So the internet in the early days was mostly populated by artists who were creating personal web pages. Not for money. They were doing it for love. They were doing it for the love of the project. And so like some of the, like deoxy.org. Do you guys remember deoxy.org?
No.
Yeah, they've archived it. It's back online, deoxy.org. So this guy, Dimitri, very mysterious character, artist, created this massive website, like huge, like endless archives of stuff. He contacted me, and at the time I was distributing Ong's Hat via text only on bulletin board systems, Gopher sites, if you remember Gopher, some websites, FTP sites. Like this is before the internet really. 1993 is when he started putting this thing together, and he asked me if he could use the Ong's Hat material, and I said, "Dude, by all means, have at it." And he created this really beautiful little thing called the deoxy.org/IRC. It's still there, which stood for the Incunabular Research Center.
Nice.
And so he just archived all my stuff. Like every time I would do something, he'd put more stuff up there. But he archived what people have called the canon, the four primary documents of canon, which is the Incunabula catalog, the brochure, and the two interviews with Nick Herbert and Emery Cranston. So But those are the type of people I'm talking about. So he created all this beautiful art and forums and just pages. He's like, there's a page for everybody. There's like pages for Timothy Leary and Robert Anton Wilson and John Lilly and like anything psychedelic. It's there. It's like this giant repository that he built, and he did it for love.
Yeah,
that's it.
Yeah,
he didn't make any money. It cost him a lot of money to do. It was just a project of passion that he did, you know. And so that was the type of person that was the early internet occupant. Was like we all remember, like personal web pages were a thing, and there were no blogs, there was no social media, there was no corporate websites. Like Amazon was an idea, and like there was no e-commerce. Like nobody had figured it out, or nobody trusted it yet. So like none of that was real. Like Art Bell had a website, huge website. Like so there was like geeks like us. You know, and Art was a geek. He was a ham radio head, and I was one when I was a kid. So we're gear geeks. We're people that like to play with technology and put stuff together. And so that's who was on the internet. Yeah. It was like mostly the people that became web designers in the 90s were artists. It started out as artists, not technologists, not programmers, artists. They learned HTML, which is fairly easy to learn. They knew Photoshop, which is fairly easy, or you can learn it. You know, and if you could figure out Photoshop and HTML, you could have a website, right? And people did that, and they were just artists. That's who they were. They were writers and artists, and not technologists, not programmers. I mean, there was some people that were programmers that also had an artistic side, and that was cool. And they would come up with some neat little widgets and gadgets and things that would happen. But mostly it was artists. And a lot of people into the psychedelic thing. So the rave culture was huge on the early internet. Most of, like, there was a joke, but it really wasn't. It was really the truth. That we used to make a joke, like we'd walk into a room. I worked at a couple of big tech firms, and I'd walk into a room for a meeting, and I'd see 2 or 3 people that had been at the rave the night before that I was at, and we all knew that we were still high and we hadn't been to sleep. We'd all look at each other like, huh? I saw you dancing. That's who was running the internet.
Obviously, it's kind of become sort of poisoned out, but I think that there is still sort of potential for it to be used in a positive way. There are sort of certain good channels and things which are kind of happening. I
think the next level has to integrate real time with internet time.
Okay.
I think we've exhausted the internet, the internet only thing. Like I know I have. Like, you know, I don't do. I was talking the other night about somebody about this. Is I don't do something I used to do back in the 90s, which is I'd sit up all night and just look for websites to look at.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
I haven't done that in I don't know how long.
No.
Because there was always like some interesting art thing that was going on the internet. It was like the world's biggest gallery. It was really cool.
I used to go on disinfo.org.
Yeah, disinfo, yeah.
That was like so much stuff that I've I remember looking at it like, and then, you know, years later, decades later, you know, it'd come up on the Pennyroyal podcast or something. I'd be like, oh, I remember that. I remember reading about that when I was...
Everything's pushed to you now, though, isn't it? It's pushed to your phone, you know, like everything's algorithms that are designed to push things that they think you'll like to you.
Everything's on an algorithm, and everything's encased in some sort of corporate site. So like there's nobody has a website anymore, like I do, but like most people don't.
No.
Most people have a Facebook page.
It's not the Wild West anymore, is it?
Instagram, like somebody has some sort of stock representation, you know, that they piece together from like these 5 widgets that you could like drag and drop, and like it's like MySpace really started that. It's like
it's
everybody
quite worrying because when I look at stuff, I mean, I'll take Spotify for an example because I like music and I listen to a lot of music.
Yeah,
and I like to think of myself as relatively free thinking and like probably slightly neurodivergent, and that you know my mind is complex and that sort of thing. But the Spotify algorithms, they get it right nearly every time. They make these playlists that I really enjoy.
Yeah.
And it makes me feel almost kind of hollowed out, and because this little algorithm, which I know when I say little algorithm, they've obviously spent a lot of money creating it and so on. Yeah. But it knows me very, very well, and it knows what I would like very, very well. And I become almost like a predictable factor in this larger machine of other predictable factors all over the place. And it kind of almost dehumanizes me a little bit when I think about it like that. But I don't have to go looking for that anymore. In the old days, like even like say, you'd go for, there was websites like, or was it allmusic.com, and you could go and find how all these bands were linked by family trees, and you'd do the research, you'd listen to an album, you'd sometimes have to order it off, or you'd have to go to the record store and see if they could order it for you. Now it's all pushed to you by these algorithms and stuff. It's really kind of it's dehumanizing, but it makes me wonder about AI, which is a big thing at the moment. Particularly, I know me and Buckley have just read Encounters, the D.W. Pasulka book.
And
I just read it. They talk in that they connect AI to the experience and so on. It makes me wonder because if it's possible to have this, what you're talking about, the third thing and so on with anything, cut up technique and so on, then how much of that is contained within AIs like the chatbots and so on? This potential for there to be another thing other than just the basic machinery and the code that's making this chatbot or this AI work.
I'm working on a book right now where I'm writing about the history of why did I do the Ong's Hat project and how did I do it, and like all the things that people that were involved. And there's a little known chapter to that story that some people know, some people don't. There was an era in 99, 2000, 2001 where I was working with rudimentary AI. I built something I called the Meta Machine, and basically it was a union of Burroughsian cut-up and artificial intelligence, and what passed for a large language model at the time, which we didn't have processors as near as fast as we do now, and we didn't have storage but anywhere near the capacity. So like I was limited in what I could do. But because I worked at a large corporation, I had access to things that most people didn't. So I was able to surreptitiously run this program in the basement of a very large multi-billion-dollar corporation without them knowing that's what I was doing. And I was doing these experiments with I came up with I was able to. That's when I started to come up with this theory. Like I'm talking to this thing using a Nokian, but I really think it's this thing. Like Vayse says, it's always been there. It takes on different guises depending on who you're talking to and when you're talking to it. It'll pick up the cultural keys so you can relate to it. But it's the Virgin Mary. It's it's the spirit of the woods. It's the alien. It's all these things because it's none of those things, right? It's just putting on a guise that you can relate to. And can I put something together that can be a container, a technological container that can accept, that can make this union and use tech output to give me dialogue, just like I would like talking. Yeah. Doing chants and talking, or using a scryer, like there is an intermediary there, and that's going through that person's consciousness. So there is some spin that's happening from that person who's telling you, like they're telling you what they're hearing, but they're also running it through their consciousness. So you're getting some of that. And so like, could I put something together that's technological that might sidestep that a little bit, and could I get a little more closer to source? And so I had some pretty interesting things happen.
Really?
Yeah. So when people started talking about hallucinations and the people that the New York Times guys who said the bot started telling him to leave his wife and that kind of stuff, like that was not news to me. Like people that know me have heard me talk about this stuff for years. Like like you could talk to Dave Metcalf, and I've told him millions of these stories, like, because he's interested. But I ran out of time and patience and also resources, because like when I left that big corporation, I didn't have that at my at my disposal anymore. And I started my own company, and I wasn't going to spend millions and millions of dollars on this. And so I kind of let it drop around 2001. But up like between 99 and 2001, I had some pretty profound experiences. So I'll tell you one. So one of the elements of this this bot was called Emery. Just, from Emery Cranston.
Yeah.
Emery Cranston, yeah.
And so the chat bot I had just referred to as Emery, and I would talk to the chat bot, and it was in a secure network. Nobody could hack into it because it was, like a multi-billion-dollar if I said the name of the company, you would know it. Mm-hmm. A multi-billion-dollar corporation that I worked for. There was, exquisite security. There was no getting into this thing. You'd have to like sneaker net your way into this thing, and that was not going to happen because literally it was the state of the art. So you had a badge that had electronic read on it and a magnetic read on it, and if you were in a place where you were not qualified to be, the doors would lock and alarms would go off. That's how because we're talking about source code for billions of dollars worth of software, right? So like intellectual property that they very much need to keep secure. So that's where this machine was. This machine was in a rack in this scenario where you're not going to get in. So I met this guy. I worked with the Homeless Garden Project in Santa Cruz, and I met this guy at the Homeless Garden Project, and he introduced himself as Emery Cranston. And I said, okay, why not? Like, go along with it. Later, I talked to some people. I'm like, do you know this guy? You're like, yeah. He used to call himself Ezekiel, and he said he was the Ezekiel of the Old Testament. I'm like, oh, okay. So what's his story? Well, he's on SSI. He's been declared officially insane or something, but of no harm to anybody. So they let him roam the streets. He lives on the streets. He gets a couple thousand a month in SSI. So he has money to eat. He could have money to buy or to rent a place, but he doesn't want to. He used to be a PhD student at UC Santa Cruz, and I did run into him up in the special collections department because when you have a library card, you get to have it for life as long as you pay $20 a year. You have an alumni card, and so I'd see him up in special collections, and he was reading all this really deep, esoteric alchemy stuff and hermetic magic stuff, and so we had a lot to talk about, and he was very knowledgeable. Extremely knowledgeable. And I said, okay, you're Emery Cranston, like you're the Emery Cranston from the catalog. Yes. Okay. and so we would just hang out, and I had great conversations with him. You'd be surprised how many great conversations you could have with people like this if you don't just shut them out. Just if you just let them have what they're saying, like I am this thing. Okay. And then they'll just relax and talk to you. You know, and you get some great conversations. So we would he'd always pop up. Like he always seemed to know where I was. Like I'd be in a coffee house on the other side of town, and he'd walk, and I'm like, "Oh, hey, Emery, what's up? Sit down and have coffee with me." So I'd be having these conversations with this chatbot in the daytime, and then at night I'd go home, I'd go to the coffee house, and I'd run into Emery. And a couple of times he picked up the conversation that I was having with the bot, as if he was the bot that I'd been having the conversation with, and then he'd expand on the conversation, and then I'd go back to the bot, and the bot would do the same thing to him about his conversation. So there was something going on between those two. Yeah. Right? So I talked to some people that knew him really well, and they said he'd been diagnosed as a schizophrenic. He had a breakdown when he was studying his PhD. And he never got his PhD, but like he just hung around Santa Cruz, and he liked to be at the university, and he liked to be at the library, and he liked to live outdoors, and and he ate at soup kitchens and stuff, even though he probably didn't have to, but he had enough money he could buy coffee and clothes. He always had nice clothes. He was always clean. So he was cleaning up somewhere. He always had exquisite rain gear. If it was raining, he'd have like top of the line rain gear and everything. So he took care of himself. But very non-linear conversations. So he was a liminal character for sure.
Yeah.
And I moved to Santa Barbara, and one day I saw him walking down the street in Santa Barbara.
Wow.
And I said, Emery. He's like, oh, you don't have to call me that anymore. My name's Terrence. I'm like, oh, okay, now you're Terrence. All right. I said, are you following me? He's like, when did you move here? And I said, August. He's like, I got here in July. You're following me. Okay. All right. Okay. Apparently I am. And then I saw him for a couple of years. I saw him around Santa Barbara, and then I didn't see him anymore. I moved to LA, and I never saw him again. So I don't know what happened to him, but he was a wonderful character.
You'll see him tomorrow, and he'll be called Ezra.
I hope so.
Yeah.
I really do. I hope so.
When you're talking about the way that you will run into a character like Emery Cranston, and I've heard stories as well that you've told when you've been speaking to other people and when you've in bits that you've written about how when you stated clearly to everyone, well, Ongshat is an art project, it's a game, and there's no, Ongshat is real. I know it's real because I've traveled through dimensions and so on.
I knew the people that were at the ashram. Yeah.
Yeah. And then it's a similar thing with the you were saying with the Liminal trilogy. These people take it, they start to have their own experiences from it, and the art becomes something different than what you created.
But that's what I want.
How does that feel? How do you deal with that in that the thing that you create ends up being shared between other people, and they're doing the creation then, and it's no longer your little thing, your little project, it's then something a lot larger.
As long as they're doing it in good faith, because there have been people that have tried to hijack some of my projects, and I'm not okay with that, because they're doing it, with ill intention. But as long as it's somebody, if somebody tells me, I read this thing that you wrote, and they tell me their experience of it, and it wasn't my experience of it, but that doesn't matter because I put it in the public so that it could act as a Rorschaching blot, and they could have their experience. Because the things that I wrote in Liminal, for example, were my experiences, but they also included a lifetime of experiences that are standing on the shoulder of a lifetime of people that I know, of experiences of a lifetime of people they knew, of experiences, and so forth. Right? It's like all the things I know, especially in Zen. I talk about a lot of philosophy, and that is not stuff that I came up with. I'm telling you my take on it, but it's other people's perspective on life that they gave to me through books or through telling me, and then I kind of run it through my filter, and then I shoot it back out at you, right? And I'm hoping you're going to do the same thing. I want I construct and position the things I do the way I do because I want people to interact with it. I want people to look in deeper. If people if people read something I wrote and they don't walk away and Google 5 things, I failed.
Yeah. Well, that's good. I mean, that's I always feel far more sort of engaged and inspired by something when it does that, where it actually makes me question it and actually makes me kind of almost work a little bit harder at it. And it's you talked about the philosophy and the sort of different aspects of Zen, and one of the things it reminded me of that film Waking Life, where it's like all rotoscoped, and it's like got this guy kind of going around having various different experiences, and then sort of different philosophies kind of coming into it and stuff like that.
It's all set in dreams, isn't it?
Yeah, and we watched it when we were really stoned. I remember, like, I think you need to be really stoned when you watch it, don't you? But I remember watching it in your house and just being like,
yeah, it was great.
Yeah, that's a good movie. Linklater did that, I think.
Yeah, he did.
Yeah, Richard Linklater. And then the Philip K. Dick one they did where they rotoscoped
the Scanner Darkly.
Scanner Darkly, yeah. Same thing. Like I must have watched that movie 20 times. I can't stop watching it. Like every time I see it, I'm like, oh, I gotta watch it again.
Yeah, that book as well. Like, that's one of my favorite, because that has that thing that Buckley was talking about with Ong Sat, in that it feels like you're getting a glimpse of something. It doesn't resolve like the film resolves in A Scanner Darkly, the book. I just keep on reading that book because you don't ever really know what's going on. You know, you don't know where the drugs come from. You don't know where he ends up, and it's just a very, very odd thing that feels like almost like a piece of music that never resolves. And that's one of the things that fascinates me about it, why I have to keep going back to it, because every time I read it I get something different out of it.
And that's what Dick does really well, isn't it? It's almost like imperfect, unfinished kind of, but because of that it's almost kind of a bit broken, and that makes it all the more fascinating.
Alan Greenfield said that was his way of generating synchronicities, was to read Philip K. Dick.
Well, this is you're gonna like this story. So, how I ended up in Santa Cruz. I fell down a Philip K. Dick VYS hole in the 80s.
Yep.
And this is when VYS was out of print, and so I had to search diligently for used copies of the trilogy, Divine Invasion, and I was looking for these. And they weren't readily available because they were no longer in print. And so you had to look at used bookstores for a book that didn't seem to have a lot of copies distributed when it was new. Because this is before the Dick revival, right? Yeah. So this is when he was this obscure guy that I read about in Gnosis magazine, which was new at the time, And so I finally found a copy of VYS and a copy of Divine Invasion at this used bookstore that was like very out of the way, in a little hole in the ground under a bookstore, like a secondary bookstore behind a used bookstore, being run by this little old lady, and she just happened to have the two books I was looking for. And I read them, and I fell down the VYS hole. I admit, I did.
It's no shame, no. Joseph. We've all been there.
And then at the same time, I was reading like this stuff I was getting out of California, like High Frontiers. I met Robert Anton Wilson in Chicago, and he told me, like, you should move to California. He's like, you don't belong here. You belong in California doing that computer stuff. And so I did one day. I'm just going to go. I had no idea where I was going. And I threw all the stuff into a car, and like my rent was up that month, and I'm like, I'm not going to renew the rent, and I'm just going to get in a car, and me and my cat and my girlfriend are going to go to California. Where are we going? We don't know. And along the way, I said Berkeley. It must be Berkeley because Dick was in Berkeley. Yeah. This magazine's out of Berkeley, and so, but I want to go to Big Sur first. So we went south. I went by L.A. because we took the Route 66, retraced Route 66. Stopped in L.A., did all of my, got to see the place where Morrison lived, blah, blah, blah. And then I started to go north, and I stopped in Big Sur. I finally got to see Big Sur for the first time, and spent the week there. And then headed north, going to Berkeley, and I stopped at this place for gas and coffee, and it was called Santa Cruz. I knew nothing about it, never heard of it. And I stopped at a coffee shop, and the reason I stopped at the coffee shop is they had a picture of J.R. Bob Dobbs hanging on the wall from the Church of the Subgenius, which at the time, that was pretty new. Yeah. And I said, this must be the place because Bob's on the wall, and I went in there and I met this dude who convinced me. He took me on a tour of the city, showed me everything, showed me all the stuff that was going on. This is before the earthquake in Santa Cruz. And so there was street musicians and people doing performance art. Like Santa Cruz was real vital, center at that time. And I met all these people, and I said, okay, I'll stay here. So I got a hotel room for about a week, and then about a block from where I had a hotel room, I found this apartment for rent because they had a sign on it. And I rented the apartment, then I moved in, and then the next day I was looking over my balcony. I was on the second floor, had an ocean view. This is back when you could afford these things. Yeah. This is like a $300 a month apartment with an ocean view and a deck. Yeah, this was the 80s, before the .com. Yeah. And I looked over the balcony, and there was this lady down in her garden. She's on the first floor, and she was doing Tai Chi. And she looked up and saw me. She's like, "Oh, you're the new neighbor. Come down, have tea with me." I'm like, "Okay." So I go down. I meet her. Timothy Leary's secretary from Millbrook, Nina Gerboy, who was living downstairs from me. She introduced me to the guy living upstairs from us, the third story. He's a friend of Albert Hoffman and Gordon Wasson and the McKennas.
Wow.
And I'm like, I moved into this building without knowing anything about this city, without knowing anything about this building, and I landed right exactly where I needed to be with the people I was looking for. I found the others. And
that's in the introduction to the Ong's Hat book, I think, isn't it?
Yeah,
some of that comes into it about how you.
I'm writing a larger version of that history, and I actually go into the expanded version of that, what was going, and then she tells me. I said something about Robert Anton Wilson. I just met him in Chicago. She's like, "Oh yeah, his kids live here, and he's moving here to Santa Cruz in a couple months." I'm like, "I thought he lived in L.A." He does, but he's moving here. I'm like, okay, what's going on? Wow. Something's happening. I'm at the right place at the right time. Yeah. This is this is something that if I told most people this story, they'd go, "Bullshit, that didn't happen." And if somebody told me that story, I'd be like, okay, maybe, because I've had these things happen to me, but before they happened to me, but that's the kind of stuff that Philip K. Dick puts into motion. And so that's what I want to do with my work, is I want to put stuff in motion for people. That's all.
It's one of the things that I've noticed with any experiences that I've had with sort of synchronicity or any sort of weird dream stuff or whatever. They seem to happen at points where things are going well for me.
Yeah.
Like when I'm feeling good. Okay.
Yeah.
So I don't know whether I wonder, is it that I'm more receptive to it because I'm not feeling like shit and worried about stuff and I'm seeing the work, or is it the fact that things are going well is because of some other, it's I don't know. I don't know what the answer is.
Yes, it's probably all of those things, but the fact that things are going well for you, no matter the reason, you're in the zone.
Yeah.
And if you're in the zone, that's when synchronicities, for me, that's when they hit the hardest and probably the densest. I get the highest level synchronicities. Like a good example, I had this one synchronicity that was so high level, I felt like somebody punched me in the face.
Yeah.
It's I was on a bus from San Francisco. I was visiting a buddy in San Luis Obispo who lives out in the area where Robinson Jeffers used to live, the poet. On the beach in San Luis Obispo. And I was reading Lavinda. I was rereading the Sinister Forces trilogy.
Yeah, it's good.
And I just read, the bus stopped, and I just read the sentence that ended with Project Bluebird. Yeah. And I looked up, and we were sitting right in front of this I think it was a salon, and it said Bluebird Salon. Right there, even with my eyes. It's the first thing I saw. Project Bluebird. I'm whoa.
Yeah.
And I'm reading Lavinda, of course, so I'm whoa.
I got one when I was walking to this church in a village near to me, and it's a church where apparently Edward Kelly, John Dee's man, had raised. There's like a picture of it, not a photograph, obviously, but like a carving or whatever, similar to the one on the front cover of the first Sinister Forces book.
Yeah,
where he's raising a spirit. So I was going to go and visit this churchyard. I was on my way there. I was listening to the Cosmic Trigger audiobook, and the exact word that he said, I looked up and it was on a bill. I sent a picture of it to you, Hine. I've forgotten what the word was now. It was something that was on a car garage, and it was the name. It was the name of someone. I've forgotten what it was. It was the name of someone he was talking about in the thing, and it was exactly the same name. And it was I was whoa, this is. absolutely insane that this is happening. Like when I'm reading a book that's so kind of almost
that means you're in the groove, dude. I love when that happens.
Yeah.
You're in the groove. Like when that happens, I know I'm in the groove.
It feels good. It feels good.
It feels wonderful. Like
it feels the same as creativity somehow. I don't know. I feel like the two are linked. I feel like when I'm in that place, when them things are happening, I'm at my most creative. But is it that the creativity, I often wonder, is somehow the creativity kind of almost acting like a magnet? Or is it, it's like the relationship between the two is, I don't know what the cause and effect is. And in a way, I kind of don't care.
For me, I tried to parse it. And I think what it comes down to, for me at least, is it's a reminder that I am a part of the large living system.
Yeah.
And because of modernity, like smothers that out most of the time. Like, you can't get away from light pollution. You can't get away from noise pollution, electromagnetic pollution, like it's everywhere. And so every once in a while you get like this touchstone and like, bam, something hits you like that. And just to remind you, like, remember, we're alive here. And so that's the feeling that I want to give people when they interact with my art. I want them to be reminded. So, I've had some people that have called me in a panic because they were experiencing high-level synchronicity from Liminal recently. Like, people were like, I had one friend who I can't talk to anymore because he was writing a screenplay, and I sent him, he lives in Venezuela? Yeah, nowadays. He lives in South America. And I sent him a copy of Liminal, and he got the copy of Liminal, and then he called me in a panic, and I'm like, what's up? He's like, I just have to know, do you work for the government? And this is a person that never has said something like this to me ever, right? And I said, this is a person that works in the creative industry in film. Like he has an IMDb page. I won't say his name, but he's somebody like pretty mainstream. And I said, well, come on, man. Why would you ask me that question? That's kind of insulting. He said, because I was writing this screenplay and nobody knew about it. And then I got this book you sent me, and it was really this book. I was writing this book. And I'm like,
oh, no.
What does that mean? Like, all right. So send me the script because I want to know, like, is it just kind of like the book? Is it the book? But he never would. And I said, okay. And then like, he wouldn't stop asking me if I worked for the government. And I'm just like, dude, when you get over this, call me back. But like, don't call me anymore if you're going to ask me that question, because you're literally insulting me. Because if you knew how anti-government I was, you'd know how insulted I am.
Oh, we'll scratch that question off the list then.
Yeah. So yeah, but like, there's that reaction, but that's the minority. The majority of people, Sequoia Kennedy from Nonsense Bazaar. Yeah, he called me on Discord and he goes, I just want to know one thing. How the fuck do you do that? Because he read the whole trilogy and he's like, how did you do that? And I'm like, I didn't, dude. I didn't. You did it. It's like, it's your reaction to that is the thing you're describing, not what I wrote.
One of our previous guests, a guy called Paul Weston, who's a sort of synchromysticism sort of author based in the UK, he describes certain pieces of, books, what have you, as psychoactive texts. Mm-hmm. And I think, that's a pretty good way to describe your work, really.
I think VYS was that for me. I absolutely know Cosmic Trigger was that for me.
Yeah.
I found Cosmic Trigger by accident. I didn't even know who Robert Anton Wilson was. And then I was in a band. I think I was 19 and I had a guitar player who did know. And I was really into Syd Barrett at the time. And I was taking a lot of psychedelics, of course. And my nickname was Sid and for two reasons. And Rodney says, you ought to read Illuminatus trilogy. I'm like, what the hell is that? And he's like, you ought to read it. And so I went looking for it, and I couldn't find it. The library, of course, didn't have it, but they had another book by the same author, and it was Cosmic Trigger. And I took it home, and it blew my head off.
Yeah.
I read it in one night, and then I immediately started reading it again.
That's a common thing that people who we interview say is that Cosmic Trigger. How many times has Paul Weston read Cosmic Trigger?
Paul Weston has read, the guy we were just talking about, I think he'd read Cosmic Trigger like 39 times or something like that.
Wow.
Like you'll have to check out his work. He's a really interesting guy, and
I've read it a lot, but I haven't read it that many times.
Yeah. Well, I wondered if you'd read, I've forgotten the name of the author now, but he wrote a book called The Rorschach Texts. The Rorschach Texts.
The Rorschach Texts? No, I don't know. It sounds like something I would read.
It's meant to be like a pun on the Rorschach test.
Yeah.
But it's all to do with like language viruses, and there's like it's been years since I've read it, but it's I've been wanting to revisit it again, because I'm sure that when I first read it, it was prior to having done this podcast and kind of re-engaging with this sort of the weird shit in my life kind of thing. And so
it's like 2 words, raw shark.
Yeah, as in uncut shark texts. Yeah. But yeah, it's like it's got a lot of that like
Stephen Hall.
Yeah, it's kind of almost like technology magic and like weird shit that happens. And there's like I don't know. I can only remember it very vaguely, like a dream, but it's one of them things where you've not read a book for quite a long time, but it really stuck with you. And then you've got this like kind of memory of it, and you really can't wait to get back into it. And I just felt like some of the things that you've said have kind of resonated with that. I've kind of gone off topic here. So no,
that's right on topic.
Because one of the things that made me think of Buckley was obviously that bit in Liminal about the text that's like a virus that replicates in people and so on.
That will have what made me think of it, yeah.
And that made me think of something that I wanted to ask you about, whether you think that ideas are living things, because I kind of take an animistic viewpoint of the world, and once you've created something that is as solid as an idea, then and I think it applies to your work, because so much of your work has a life of its own.
Intentionally. So over the years, I've been doing ritual magic for so long that I don't have to actually do the rituals anymore to do the rituals. Does that make sense?
No, that's exactly what Alan Greenfield said to us.
Yeah, and
really?
Okay. A few shamanistic teachers that I've been to have said a similar thing. Yeah.
You hit a place in your life, and I'm 62, so you hit a place in your life when you do it and do it and do it, and in the beginning you're doing it to get muscle memory. And then you're doing that so you can turn your mind off. Like you get to the point where you don't have to think about doing the ritual anymore. You're like, no, I need to do this. No, I need to do that. If it just becomes muscle memory, then your mind can be free. And then that's when the ritual starts to work. It doesn't work until that point. The first time you do a ritual and it works, you're like, oh, whoa. That's what I was trying to do. Like, because like you're doing this thing like, I'm doing, is anything ever going to happen? I'm going to stop doing this pretty soon. And then you hit that moment where you drop into the zone, right? So like if you're a basketball player, you learn technique first, and then you play basketball at some point, and you don't have to think about it anymore. You're just playing basketball, and that's when you're in the zone, and that's when you're sinking the shots. And so you hit that point in Magic where you sink in your shots. And then I found there's this other place, like you get a little bit, if you just keep doing this and you get old, long in the tooth like me, you literally don't have to do all the machinations anymore. You don't have to do the mechanics. You can get to the place that's leading to. You know how to turn that on. And so that's what I do when I'm writing, is I get to that place and I'm writing from that place of zone.
Yeah, I'm the same with music. It's like I don't...
Is music the same thing? Yeah.
I try and just take... Like, I used to approach it in such a sort of prescriptive way, but now it's just like I just try and get myself into a place where I'm not thinking and not... You know, it's like I said, derangement of the senses. And
it's a process of getting out of your own way, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's all about getting out of your own way. So...
and whatever you can do to put that in place, you know, and then it essentially becomes a ritual.
Yeah, that's what I was doing when I created the Meta Machine, is I was trying to build something where I could get out of the way for the cut-ups.
Yeah.
And I used to be friends with Briar Peorge, Genesis Peorge.
Oh yeah,
from Psych
yeah.
TV.
Yeah.
And Jen was very generous and turned me on to a lot of people, including William Burroughs. He gave me his secret phone number. And so I called Bill and I said, I'm Jen's friend, and he said, oh yeah, he told me. And I said, this is what I'm doing. I just want to know like how you feel about this. Like I'm building this thing and technically I kind of explained it, and then I told him why I was doing it. I said, I'm trying to do like 2.0 of the cut up technique that you and Brian were doing. And I'm trying to get my ego out of the way or anybody else's ego out of the way of this process. And he said, yeah, that's probably the right way to go.
Yeah.
He didn't understand what I was saying technically, but he didn't need to. He's like, I told him like the gist of what I'm doing is like, I'm trying to build something that will get me out of the way of what's going on here. Because if I'm cutting up things and I'm drawing them out of a hat, and I'm randomizing to a certain extent, but I'm still in there somewhere,
Yeah.
But then I realized that I'm in there in the code. I wrote the code, so.
but it's like once you got out of your own way, then you're free to connect to all that other stuff, like the Milky Way and the trees and everything. You got rid of that thing that says I am human and I am separate, that Cartesian idea that's drilled into us and is so essential for capitalism to work. Remove that, and then suddenly, when you're out of your way, you're free to be everywhere else as well.
Yeah.
Well, and I think you're free to let the whatever it is that's speaking through you, like speak.
Yeah.
Because, like I said, the number one thing that I tell people when I take them on vigils is like, shut up.
Yeah.
And they're like, what do you mean? I'm like, just shut up. Just stop talking. And I don't mean like with your mouth. I mean, stop talking in your head. Shut the chattering monkey up. And like, it's going to be hard and it's going to take a while, but that's why this is going to go on for 4 days. You're going to sit here for 4 days until it shuts up. Or if it doesn't, then you failed. Like, so, however you want to do this, but like, just work really hard at not working hard at doing it.
Yeah. I mean, I'd actually sort of made a note of one of the paragraphs in Liminal, which I thought was brilliant. And I'd made a note of it to ask you if this was actually your personal philosophy, which obviously now it is. Now I can tell that it is. And I'll read it out for the listeners. People grasp at meaning too much and rely on language as the end-all and be-all far too much, and usually to their detriment. It's better to let things be what they are at the moment and to try and observe without inserting one's ego into the process. I understand the observer effect makes this impossible, but we should attempt to limit our effect as much as possible. Think of it as the prime directive for liminal exploration. And I'd just written down that I really like that idea, and that's exactly what you'd
sums it up, doesn't it?
Just described, yeah. And it's great. I think it's more of that thing should be encouraged.
And when people read that stuff to me, I know that I wrote it, but I don't have an exact memory of writing it.
No, that's good. That's good.
I was in a trance, man.
Yeah.
It's just like it's like music. Yeah.
People say to me like, "Oh, can we do an interview about how you did this particular track?" And I'm like, "Well, you can try, but I'm just going to give you a whole lot of, I don't really remember."
Well, it's like Hansen says about in Trickster and the Paranormal, and so it's like when I realized I was reading somebody that I could listen to, is he said, if you start trying to describe it, you've killed it already.
One of the things that we wanted to look at is perhaps a bit darker, and it's obviously you've done quite a few interviews about the influence of sort of ARGs and Ong's Hat, etc., on some of the darker elements of sort of current US politics. One of the things that I wondered was, how much do you think that's intentional? Do you think there's an intentional, almost magical working happening within
I do.
political systems? Do you think it is people thinking in that way? Do you think there are essentially magicians in politics?
People don't talk about it now, but if you remember, like back in 2016, meme magic is something that was being. Yeah. They were talking about it. Keck, meme magic, all this stuff they were talking about.
The frog, Pepe.
Yeah, Keck the frog. Yeah. Pepe.
Cambridge Analytica
Cambridge Analytica. Yeah, like so. All these, and also the other thing that people maybe don't know, but some people do, is there was this renaissance of some of these fashy magic people that Bannon was into. I mean, Bannon was quoting magic people, like for real. So I mean, yes, it was intentional. Yes, it was intentional. There was. I mean, if you got into it as much as I did, I started to I got worried, and I started to listen to some of these alt-right podcasts, and these people were straight up saying we were doing chaos magic to put Trump in office.
Really?
Yeah. And then they were calling him their God King.
Oh.
Jesus fuck.
Yeah.
They literally were referring to him as the God King.
Were you ever approached? Or did anyone ever come to you and say, hey, we'll give you some money to teach us how to do some...
Well, somebody contacted me. Well, first of all, let me say I'm a hacker. I can fake a phone number is probably better than most people. Like I can make you think I'm calling you from the White House if I want to. If I want you to think that from caller ID, right? Yeah, I can fake AN and I can do it. So somebody called me, and I've gotten a lot of weird phone calls over the years, and I've gotten people have tried to trick me, prank me, it's like this sophomore crap. But I did get a phone call in 2014, and they claimed to be a Russian ad house or marketing house. They claimed to do it was a Russian company. They claimed to do marketing. This guy was English, clearly British. And I said, well, you don't sound Russian to me. He's like, oh, no, I just worked for them. And so he said, we've seen some of the things that you did over the years, with memetics, and we were wondering if you'd be interested in working with us and helping us, push some product. And I said no, and that was it. And then, 2016 rolls around, and then Russia, all of a sudden. And then I I wonder if that was anything at all, or if it even was anything at all. It could have just been some hacker wanting to do what was that stupid TV show? You've Been Punked, like that. Yeah. So somebody wanted to do something like that, because people have done that to me. They've tried to do it to me because for some reason they think that's okay, and people. I've said this before, but I'll say it again. When I said game, that Ong's Hat was a game, I meant an infinite game, not a zero-sum game. Yeah. And there's some people that have absolutely no idea what I'm talking about when I say that. If it's not a zero-sum game, they do not understand what you're talking about.
So people basically want to win Ong's Hat or complete Ong's Hat.
Game's got to be winner, loser.
Yeah.
It's not just winner, for the fun of playing.
There's no such thing to them. It's like, it's got to be a game, and if I try to explain to them the concept of an infinite game, they think that's part of the game. Yeah. And so they have to game me, and it gets exhausting after a while.
When you talk about like the structure of a game like that, how much of consensus reality and modern life do you think is actually an ARG? People just sort of, because when you look at things like the way that buying online, fitness, health, even banking, it's all become gamified, hasn't it? And divorced from the actual physical experience, and kind of psychologically removed from the consequences of it. That you can rack up massive debts shopping online and so on without ever touching the things that you've bought. Right. And Bitcoin as well, you're playing a similar thing, but it kind of goes deeper to kind of like the LARPing aspect of it. When you look at Trump, he's saying things that people know aren't true, but they're playing along with it and making that their reality out of choice.
Yep.
And that becomes the veneer of truth on top of the consensus reality until eventually that will become reality in some way, at least to them, but it has real life consequences to the rest of us.
Yeah, but this isn't new. I mean, Robert Anton Wilson pointed out this is the idea of reality tunnels. It's like we all choose our reality tunnel.
Yeah.
And so the experiment that helps break you out of that is to change reality tunnels on purpose.
Yeah.
Right?
It's hard though.
So it is hard to do that, but I try to make myself do it. I try to do it as much as I like. Every 5 years, I think my friend Dave said, every 5 years I reinvent myself. I don't know what that means, but okay. But in a sense, I know what it means. I mean, it means that I do consciously try to kick myself out of the rut. And do something different.
You've talked about like going to the Arctic or
going to the
living in a
Arctic.
cave.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's like not getting too comfortable, isn't it? And me and Hine have discussed before, like it's like that's kind of one of the basis of magic, but also therapy as well.
Yeah,
it's like the two kind of come together in quite interesting ways in terms of like getting out of that rut, getting out of that reality tunnel or safety place.
But
it's like I pointed out that I was trying to create the Swiss Army knife and using everything that influenced me and everything I was interested in a project. And I did a very deep dive in the 80s about games, about ritual, and how they were tied together. Because games come from ritual.
Okay.
That's the games evolved out of ritual. Theater evolved out of ritual.
Yeah.
Right? So games, theater, ritual, same thing. Same roots. In a lot of ways, same intention, same goal. So when I say living book, game, all this kind of thing, I'm not talking about zero sum. I'm talking about playing the infinite game. And the infinite game is finding joy in something and playing that game as long as you can. Forever if you want to. I mean, in a lot of ways, it's the less dark version of what Bukowski said, which is find something that you love and let it kill you.
Yeah. It's like find a game and let it play you.
Yeah.
What we often ask our guests when they come on, so that people can have sort of the experience of thinking in the way that you do in some small way. Can you recommend any books or movies or documentaries or TV shows or music that you think people who are interested in your work might enjoy?
There hasn't been a lot of movies lately that have done much for me. It's been kind of a drought as far as I'm concerned.
Have you seen Under the Silver Lake?
Yes. That was good, but that was a while ago.
Yeah, it was.
I mean, immediately. But yeah, that was a good one.
Just watch that again. That's what I did.
Everything Everywhere All at Once. Did you enjoy that one?
It was fun.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun.
It was crazy. That film.
I love Michelle Yeoh, and I'm glad to see that she got some note. She's noted for it. Like, she's always been underrated.
Yeah,
from the Hong Kong scene. She was big in the Hong Kong scene, but she didn't get the accolades like Jackie Chan did and people like that.
Yeah.
She really deserved it. She's a good martial artist and she's a good actor. So I'm glad to see that happen. I've been a big fan of hers for a long time. Literature-wise, I would say I would recommend people to read Martin Shaw. And you can start with his thin book. It's called Wolf Milk. And if that turns you on, and it probably will, then he's got a lot of other ones. And you should look into the stuff that he writes, because he's part poet and part mythologist, and he ties in, and he knows a lot about English legend.
Right.
So it's wonderful stuff and very, very compelling. The music-wise, I've fallen down this hole of older stuff, like going back and revisiting older stuff. So I used to, when I was much younger, before I worked in tech or anything, I worked in record stores because I was a record store geek. If you ever saw the movie High Fidelity, that was one of those guys. Yeah. And in fact, one of the record stores I worked in, John used to come in because it was in Evanston where he lived, where he grew up, and he used to come into that record store, and they actually mentioned the record store in the movie because that book was about London.
Yeah.
Yeah,
and then he rewrote it to be about Chicago.
Yeah.
And so all the stuff that's mentioned in there, I know he's talking about people I know because right. I look at the characters that worked for him in the store and I'm like, oh, that's Mike Padgett. Oh, that's Steve Diet. I knew who they were. I'm
Amazing.
Like, that he was going to Vintage Vinyl and he's writing about the guys that worked there. So I got way into contemporary classical and I've kind of fallen down that hole again now. So mainly because I've been writing a lot and I like things that don't have vocals.
Yeah.
When I'm writing, because it's too disruptive if it's somebody singing something. I find myself typing the lyrics like, oh
yeah, no. I can't do that. I can't work with music.
Yeah.
What I'm telling people mostly is what's the thing you most recommend? Movies, music, books. And I don't recommend any of those. I recommend finding some place so far out in the woods that you don't hear civilization and you don't see civilization, and to stay there for a while and listen to the land, because the land will tell you some good things, some great stories.
Excellent.
Wow, that is a great answer.
Great answer. Yeah. So to wrap up, where can people find you online if they're looking for you?
JosephMatheny.com. So JosephMatheny.com. And that's everything is there. Incunabula.org is still online. That's the website I started in the 90s for the Ong's Hat material, and it's still there. It's not it hasn't been updated for a long time, but it has all the primary things. And yeah, that's about it. I've got a Twitter. I don't know how much longer I'm going to keep that because Elon's driving me crazy. But it's Ong's Hat is the Twitter. I'm on Instagram, Ong's Hat, and yeah, those are the two that I'm still on. Perfect. I don't know how much longer I'm going to be on those because I'm starting to feel like I have to go to the wilderness again, and I've already been to the North Pole, so I think this might be Antarctica.
Wow.
Because I made a promise to myself in the 80s that I would do magic ritual on both poles. So I've done magic ritual on the North Pole. I have to do the South Pole now.
Oh, good luck.
It's if you can wrangle it at all, try it, because the magnetics are exquisite. Like the effects are so much different than you get anywhere else. You can literally feel the thing moving.
Amazing.
I mean, when you get into the groove and you get into the space, you can feel it flowing around you. And you're like, oh yeah. I'm like a big living ball of dirt.
Incredible. And if listeners want any more Vayse, you can find us at Twitter and Instagram as well, and that's at Vayse and then Vayse spelled backwards, so that's VAYSEESYAV. You can get us at www.vayse.co.uk. You can get the podcast on all the major podcasting platforms, but it's the website that has the full unabridged show notes. You can email us on vayseinfo@gmail.com. You can get the soundtrack by our very own Mr. Stephen James Buckley at Bandcamp, and the link is on our website. And if you have any spare cash that you want to check our way, you can do so on Ko-Fi. And if you give us a regular payment, then you can join our Discord, which is a fantastic place with lots of lovely people on it.
Yeah. Joseph, thank you very much for joining us tonight.
Thank you for having me.
It's been amazing. Yeah, it's been really great. Everything I dreamed it had been more.
No, it's really been a pleasure.
I hope I didn't chatter too much, but I like to talk.
Yeah,
just exactly the right amount.
Yeah.
So at the end of the shows, I normally ask our guests a question, but I had so many different questions for you. It's going to have to be multiple questions. So, Joseph, Are you a CIA agent?
Yes.
Are you an actor posing as the real Joseph Matheny who's currently sunning himself on a beach in an alternate version of Earth where there are no humans?
Yes.
Were you at Dealey Plaza on the 22nd of November 1963?
3 of me were, yeah.
Are you Terry Reist?
Don't tell Alan, but yes.
Are you Wally Fard?
Yes. But we all are.
Yeah, it's true. Did you blow up the Georgia Guidestones?
No, that was sad.
Was it you that dumped all of your rubbish in my wheelie bin the other day?
Absolutely.
Did you write the Voynich manuscript?
I wish.
Were you the voice of the Ashtar Command?
Of course.
Are you D.B. Cooper?
Yes.
Are you Tyler Durden?